Welcome to all of our panelists today. And as pilots of our sustainability programs, we need to navigate this alphabet soup in one way or another. And believe me, the most complex of GPS systems has not yet been invented to help us to do that. Maybe it will come. But with everyone currently wanting a slice of the controls, we do need to be decisive in defining what will help us deliver a more sustainable world, and not only just more sustainable business. So in the current landscape, it is easy to lose the big picture and to get into arguments about what metrics are better, whether it's either or a combination, and who should actually decide. Well, maybe we all should decide. Maybe we are all pilots in this flight to sustainable development. But specifically now, flying with me in the cockpit are four experienced and accomplished sustainability leaders. And I'd like to briefly introduce them, and then we'll hear their perspectives. So we have Esther Ann, the Chief Sustainability Officer of City Developments Limited. We have Anirban Ghosh, the Chief Sustainability Officer of the Mahindra Group. We have Victoria Tan, the Head of Group Risk Management and Sustainability at Ayala Corporation. And we have Colleen Palaganas, the Vice President of Sustainability for SM Investments Corporation. Thank you very much to all of you for joining me in the cockpit today. So I'd like to first ask you all the same question and hear from you all in turn. And that is just, could you please tell us a little bit about your company and your reporting journey, and share your approach to the different frameworks and standards that you are currently using, and what your preference is and why. Perhaps, Esther, we could start with you.
Okay, hi, thank you for having me. And this has been really exciting. Well, for CDL, we are actually established in 1963 in Singapore with 8 employees, and today we are operating in 29 countries and regions. So, of course, the whole, the world has been changing tremendously, and it has been a long journey for us. We started our sustainability journey since 1995. At that time, what we feel is really the right thing to do. And the ethos that we established was conserving as we construct, because we know that construction and building industry has a huge environmental and social impact on people and how people live, work, and play. So that was what we started without having the crystal ball that we really have, to deal with climate change and even existential type of, climate threats today. So, but that actually really gave us the advantage of, have a long lead time to come to where we are. So sustainability reporting is just a natural expansion. What get measured, get managed. So what we did is in 2004, we started with a few pages of CSR report. At that time, sustainability, the term was not really, as a buzzword yet. So we called it CSR report, about 7 or 8 pages in our annual report for a few years. So we learned about what are the issues that we should look at, and a more operational risk defensive type of risk management approach. Then 2008, we actually published the first dedicated sustainability report using PRI's approach in 2008. That became the first, such report in Singapore. So that is where we learned. And at that time, it was still looking at more operational, energy consumption, waste, and water and all that. So over the years, and fast track to 2015, IIRC, came up with an integrated approach. And we actually, it's earlier than that, but we had a lot of discussion with Paul and all that. And finally, we really feel that, hey, that's the way forward. We have to look at ESG through the integrated lens, through the business and financial lens. So how do we articulate it within 6 capitals? That's how we look at IIRC and adopt it into our reporting framework. And then as the world continued to move on, you have the TCFD, you have the SDG in 2016. So we started embracing SDG in 2016 with 9 goals, then expanded to today 14 goals. And then TCFD come out with really the strategy part is very, very important. Then, of course, we report to CDP for more than for about 12 years now. And we also, established the SBTI validated reduction target in 2018. And so, of course, we also, as a listed company, we also have to look at address what our stakeholders want and what the investors want. So early this year in January, we actually also embraced, as SASB, the real estate standard, which is very, very similar to the GRESB standard. The GRESB is for real estate is the Global Real Estate Sustainability Benchmark, which is also gaining traction. So not that we are too free that we want to, have more the merrier. It's really, we need to evolve. And we actually also started materiality study since 2014. We have to evolve. Not that we really want to like the more the merrier, that we want to really address to a diverse, stakeholders' appetite and requirement for different type of, information. And of course, all these sustainability reporting also linked to the ratings and rankings, which is another set of like, alphabet soup that, getting hotter and hotter. So life as a reporter is really very, it's not easy. But I think after listening to all the conversation and all that, I think a lot of friends and also, is a little bit confused that are we going to just use one single standard? And my interpretation is, I said, no, the word is actually harmonization. And in my own vocabulary, it's a blended approach. That's what I have, over 13 years of reporting experience and journey. That's where we are now. This is a blended approach that designed to address the top material issues that our business, is facing. So don't do things that it is not materials to your business. Don't do things that, your stakeholder, your key stakeholder holders don't think that it is important. And you also have to look at the future lens. Don't put on just the past. So that's why we actually use a sustainability report as our strategic communication tool as well. And we actually launched in 2017 our Future Value 2030 Sustainability Blueprint that align our goals and targets with the global goals. And every year, and in fact, every quarterly, we report, not just an annual reporting, but we put online our quarterly report as well. So that is what we do. And we don't feel that, there is a need that we have to adopt one or the other. But there is resource and time constraint. You can't be having, every standard that you want. But take the cue from the main stakeholders and then, look at the materiality issues and design what you think is the most, add value to your business and look at it with the future lens and the business lens as well. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Esther. It sounds like, there isn't a standard or framework out there that you haven't adopted. Must make life quite complex. Anirban, how about you at Mahindra? What's your reporting approach?
So the Mahindra Group is a 75-year-old group which has sustained very well, thank you. Today, it's a $20 billion group that is present in 22 industries and employs about 250,000 people. No further details on the group anymore. The trigger for sustainability reporting in our group started with a question from an analyst who asked, do you have a sustainability report? Do you have a triple bottom line report sometime 12 or 13 years ago? At that point in time, the phrase was new to us and we started digging as to what does it mean and what do we need to do. And that's how the sustainability journey started. When we did begin reporting, we started with the GRI framework of the time and have grown with the GRI framework since. If you look at all the reporting frameworks, there are two broad things they address. First is the content, and the second is the manner of presentation. The only one that really looks at the manner of presentation is IIRC. Everybody else looks at content in some way or the other, some more comprehensive, some less comprehensive, some more tailored to a sector, some more generic and asking you to choose from. So that's the broad differentiation between the two. So over time, we found it useful to use the GRI framework. We found it useful to relay the story using the integrated reporting method because it's a good way to synthesize the information and relay the story. We've seen that using the GRI framework, using IRC, DJSI, CDP, etc., about 90% of the TCFD requirements are met anyway. There are one or two other things which TCFD asks you to do, which one, as one builds capacity, will probably look at because it does help in conveying the sustainability of the business very well. As Rajesh said when closing the previous panel, picking and choosing from various frameworks helps build the story. But when you're picking and choosing, you're not just cherry picking what is convenient for you, but you're picking and choosing to convey why the business is more sustainable than it was before. To conclude, let me say that the alphabet soup is indeed very spicy. It is too hot to handle for some, and it could use a little toning down to increase wider appeal. Because you know what happens when experts get going, they really make things complex. But at this point in time, if we want to make this more widely accepted, we do need to look at a slightly toned down version so people can come on board and get started. Thank you.
Thank you, Anirban. Spicy alphabet soup, you're right. Vicky, Ayala Corporation, tell us about your approach to reporting and standards and frameworks.
Okay, thank you for that, Elaine. So Ayala Corporation has been in the Philippines for the last 186 years with the sole purpose of improving lives in any sector or industry that we are in. Just like Mahindra, we have also so many verticals, and I think you can imagine the amount of pressure that we need to put into just to make sure that we are communicating the value creation stories of Ayala Corporation as a business house. So the reporting journey started in 2008 from the lens of a CSR, just about the community, what are we doing with the community, and all of those things. And we are actually have grown, as what Mahindra also said, that we have grown together with GRI. We have been into that pain points. GRI has released all of this version 3, 3.0, 3.1, 4.0. And I think they have, for I will give credits to GRI for listening to the reporters, because the reporters said that you have been creating a long list of things that we have to tick, but that are those things relevant to our stakeholders? So they came out with this materiality process, which up to now, I value that because that actually helped us and guided us in our materiality process in Ayala Corporation. So we aligned with GRI for the longest time. In 2012, we have the first externally assured report in Ayala Corporation. External assurance is still part of the process because the mantra is whatever you do with your financial data, you should also do with your non-financial data, because these are being used by the decision makers, just like the investors that we talked about previously. And then in 2014, we said that it's about time that we have to communicate our creation of shared value. So sustainability now is being reported from the CSB framework, and that is looking at all the societal needs and looking inwardly what are the things that we can do to address those needs, build, make an innovative solution, give that a business model, and put it up to scale. Because only with scale that you can say that you have an impact. Without scale, that is not a sustainable development or sustainable business. In 2016, just like what Esther Ann said, we also used the IIRC, or the Integrated Reporting Framework, simply because, as what also Mr. Anirban said, this is a concise way of communicating your enterprise value creation stories. IIRC has a content guidelines. What are the different content that you should put into there? And there is that synthesis of how did you use all the capitals? What are the risks and opportunities that you have taken into consideration, and what are the strategies that you employed? That was in 2016. Also, during that year, we aligned our CSB framework with the UN SDGs because the SDGs are a very good corporate agenda. It tells you where are the opportunities in this very, very crowded space, right? And then in 2018, we launched our Ayala Sustainability Blueprint because we challenged ourselves. We told ourselves that we should be really contributing to the SDGs by using the language of the SDGs. We use their targets as a private corporation. What can we do with those targets, and use that not just because we want to create job. What kind of jobs do we need to create? Because that is the language of the SDGs. And then last year, we made the bold move of adapting and committing to the TCFD, although we are not yet a signatory, but we already look into the TCFD framework as a disclosure. But since I am also the risk manager of the group, I am looking at TCFD as a risk assessment framework. It is a way of future-proofing the business. What is the impact of climate change? What are the risks? And on the other side, what are the opportunities? So we have to look into that. And I find TCFD as an outside-in framework, looking at the external environment and what will be the impact to the business objectives. Then SASB also came into play. But I have a problem with that because I look at the 77 industry sectors of SASB and there is none for a conglomerate as big as diversified as Ayala. But it did not deter us not to pursue SASB because our investors are also asking us, can you take a look at SASB and see how can you use that? What we did is from all the business units, we asked them to look into SASB, take a look, and then let's see how it will roll up at the parent company level. And we did that. So in the last report that we have, I can tell you that we use GRI and SASB as a framework to communicate our performance. So that is the past, what is our positive and negative impact, and use TCFD as a future-proofing mechanism or a framework, and use IIRC to communicate that value creation stories, notwithstanding that we also have to report on the SDG. So I think that's the journey. We don't know what will be the destination, but what is important at this time is we were able to communicate to all the stakeholders, employees, suppliers, our regulators, our investors, and everyone who have a stake at Ayala Corporation. So this is an exciting journey. We hear that there's a lot of harmonization, but I think it's still a long way to be there. So for the meantime, let us be a responsible reporter, do what we can with all the resources that are available to us. I think that's my point, Elaine. Thank
Yeah, well, thanks for that, Vicky. Again, another amazing journey of reporting over the years and the incorporation of so many different standards and frameworks. And I thought your insight about the sector standards from SASB was quite relevant because not every business, and I think all of you will probably find the same. Not every business fits neatly into one sector, and that's a challenge as well. So thanks for that. Colleen, SM Investments, tell us about your reporting journey and what frameworks you tend to prefer today to disclose to your stakeholders.
Yes, hello Elaine. Forgive my voice. Hello Esther, hello Arinban and Vicky. So SM Investments is one of the largest conglomerates in the Philippines. We have interest in retail, property, and banking. Now our journey towards sustainability, actually it's anchored on our founder's principle that business growth and social development, they go hand in hand. So our purpose really is to be a catalyst for development wherever we are, wherever SM, all the communities that we serve. So being a retail brand, and our brand has been embraced, we are so grateful by so many Filipinos, part of their lives at different points of their lives. So we are very close to our stakeholders. Well, of course, in the beginning, very close to our customers, understanding ours, and then our communities. It's actually towards on the latter part that the investor focus had actually been the priority. And that is why our reporting came a little later. So our first, our SM Prime Property Group had reported earlier than us, but for SMIC, it was 2014 when we first published our report. So in the beginning, we aligned to GRI standards and recognizing the value of having some sort of a common metric disclosure and indicator for all. We hosted the GRI Summit in the Philippines, of which Ayala, of course, was such a big champion and also worked with us in this. Moving forward, I think for SM, we understand that there's so many frameworks, but our principals would like to always remind us that it's purpose and impact. So we aligned with the SDGs, of course, to also because we have to be a catalyst for development. That's our very purpose. Now, moving forward in the SM group, some companies are more advanced, more mature in their journey in sustainability more than others. So as a group now, we are looking into moving towards integrated reporting in this coming report to have a unified story, not only a story externally, but it's more internally for us to see the whole picture, understanding the financial and non-financial assets that we have, what risks and opportunities do we have. So if we truly want to be a catalyst for development, because it's not an easy thing to do as a purpose. Of course, like what Vicky mentioned, Esther and Anirban, the beauty of TCFD now is the forward looking on the risks, because that gives also a certain accountability to the stakeholders. You know, sometimes our stakeholders, we have to also disclose risk in a way that they could appreciate, because most of our stakeholders may not even be viewing the risk from their point of view. So part of our accountability is to make them be part of this process, make them understand the risk on their end as well. And this is what we would like to grow into more. The GRI standards, which we really, like Vicky said, and Esther and Anirban, commend them for, is really the fact that they have served such a very explicit guideline. If you are starting, it is a very good guideline. And I think more than choosing one or the other, it's really harmonizing. A lot actually are trying to do the same thing. And I think harmonizing wouldn't be difficult, because I think at the end of the day, all these organizations, even SASB, we want to also look into that, is we have all the same purpose. I think all of us in this meeting have one purpose. It's really to attain sustainable development and give also our stakeholders and our business leaders, our businesses, our employees, a 360 view. Where we are now, how we're operating, how are we gonna navigate? Yes, it's about also our business sustainability, but now many times the ecosystem, the lines are blurred. We are all now one ecosystem. So I think that's where SM is in our journey, and they're more advanced than us, and we're happy that we can learn from a lot of the best right now. And also, so that's where we are in our journey in sustainability.
Well, thank you, Colleen. And that was also another really interesting insight into how you approach and have progressed through your reporting journey. And particularly, I think, you know, with the way you're reporting has involved, and the fact that, as you say, we're now one ecosystem. And I think, you know, Professor King talked, when he started off in his address to us early, he talked about all of this being, you know, in the public interest. It's about public good. It's about, you know, helping society and the planet, and not just any one individual group of stakeholders. But having said that, we are hearing a lot more, particularly recently, about the interest of investors. And one of the ways that investors understand the sustainability performance of companies is through all of these host of rankings and ratings and lists and you know, comparisons. So Esther, if I come back to you, I'd like to ask you at CDL, how much attention do you actually pay to all these analyst rankings around? You must get a million questionnaires every week from all of these different organizations who want to, you know, some want you to tick boxes, some want you to tick more boxes. How do you address these approaches? How do you value these rankings and ratings? Do they influence how you disclose?
Definitely, we really pay a lot of attention to the ratings and ranking, because it is, we look to it as like an independent assessment and also affirmation of what we are doing. Is it aligned with global best practices, or how far are we? Not so much as like, oh, we must achieve A for CDP, you know, achieve AAA for MSCI. If you come, very good, we really appreciate that. But to us, it's like, yes, you guys are doing the right thing, you know. So I think this is also a good narrative that we can also present. This is like a report card to our analysts and our investor, and even our board and stakeholder, that this is not self-assessment. This is actually the independent assessment. And which we feel that it is actually in synergy with what we do in reporting, because whatever questionnaire now that came to us, normally they already extract from publicly available information. So communication is very, very important. Transparent and prompt update of information is very important. That's why in 2017, we actually established a dedicated sustainability a website. So 24/7, you have information, you know. So in fact, I receive less calls, less questions, because everything it is online. My 13 reports are all there, and over and above, you know, I mean, people scold me for spoiling market. I have the quarterly report too. And then my value, you know, 2030 goals and standard and targets, I also offer information. Where are we now, you know, every quarter. So I think with all these information, it makes life easier for us. Although there are, we are now included in 2012, not 2012, and now like the FTSE we started in 2001, and MSCI, you know, 2010. So CDP almost 15 years now. So everyone, you know, has their own focus, and everyone actually also has taught us something. For example, CDP, they focus a lot of not just, you know, decarbonization, but they look at like, okay, scenario planning, climate change scenario planning. SBTI, look at science. Don't just pluck, you know, a reduction, you know, a target from air, you know, or just, you know, oh, by 2050, I would retire already. I can just say that, oh, by 2050, zero, you know, net zero. So we must, you know, show science-based target, you know, how do you tabulate it and where you are every year. So like Global 100, I still remember 4 years ago, they asked about like, I think it was 4 years ago, they asked for our top supply chain. How do they perform? Then we were like, why are you asking us, you know, our supply chain? So, you know, fast track to today is very valuable, because supply chain risk management is very, very important. We just completed the supply chain risk segmentation study and this year, and we actually have learned a lot from it. During COVID, we all know that disruption of materials, workers, have a huge impact on our, you know, construction site. No worker, no material. How do we build? You know, so we learn a lot from some of the ratings and rankings, and they're very transparent. You like it or not, all your, you know, whatever you fill in, it is online. You know, they don't even need to ask you for opinion or whatever. So I think being transparent, being prompt, has its own value. And we offer the dedicated sustainability website. It's also keep us on our toes that we actually rate this using our own traffic light. If we are on track, we give ourselves green light. If it is like still area for improvement, it is amber. If it's red light, you won't see me here anymore. So we have to do address two problems already. So I think ratings and ranking have their value. Yes, we know that there are a lot of practitioners really feel the pain. We feel the pain too, but it is not just about tick boxing. There is actually learning lessons from it. Yeah.
I think that's great, Esther. Thanks for that. Two key insights I took from that is, one is that you can use these rankings and ratings as an opportunity to learn and to understand where the new focus is, and that can be very helpful in anticipating and avoiding or mitigating emerging risks. And the second is, the more transparent you are in the first place, the less trouble you have in meeting the needs of all of these investor analyst rankings and ratings. So those, I think, are two interesting things. But you also mentioned the supply chain, and I wanted to ask Anirban about that, because you have a massive supply chain, and I was wondering, what are the sort of, if we're talking about alphabet soup, what part of the alphabet soup are you asking your supply chain to taste? What do you demand from your supply chain in terms of disclosure, standards? Do you demand them to disclose? Do you encourage them? If so, how? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Before I dive into that, let me mention that in conversations like this, we usually ask, are you using this standard? Are you reporting? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? Very rarely do we ask, are you, as a result of your actions, actually becoming more sustainable? And how do we even gauge whether you are becoming more sustainable or not? That really is the question. And that is the question that drives us to then ask, okay, so what do you need to do to be more sustainable? Where are the risks coming from? Where are the uncertainties? And how do we deal with it? Because at the end of the day, nobody wants his or her company to be unsustainable, and hasn't wanted to be unsustainable from the time corporations started. It's just that what is required to be sustainable has kept on evolving, and we have learned new tricks. And at this point in time, we are learning that the environment, the society can have adverse impact on your business if not handled in a particular way, and therefore you must pay attention to that. The same story holds for the supply chain. Risks in the supply chain that could disrupt your business has been a matter of interest for supply chain managers and risk managers forever. So within our company, we had a very robust risk management framework, which didn't necessarily address issues of environment till recently. And now this framework is being upgraded, and issues of environment, issues of society, issues of human rights, etc., are all going into that framework, because issues related to this can disrupt the supply chain. A few years ago, we wanted to drive all our suppliers towards sustainability reporting. We got them trained by KPMG. Some of them came out with reports. They were presented at the GRI conference in Amsterdam. But in the process, we realized that the suppliers needed a lot of hand-holding. Most suppliers did. The large ones, and there are some suppliers who are larger than our company, they didn't need any hand-holding. They could be on this platform talking about the subject just like you and me. So the suppliers that did need hand-holding, we began a very strong capacity building work with them, so that they understood the issue and started taking the actions. Then we've created a self-assessment checklist for them to be able to see, are they making progress or not? That's for them. But overall performance, there is a sustainability dashboard for suppliers, which we use to audit every year. And on the basis of the results, there is an awards ecosystem. So this whole ecosystem gets suppliers going towards A, being more sustainable for the future, and B, beginning on the sustainability reporting journey. Because if they do the things that are there on the sustainability checklist, then doing reporting is just about writing down what they have done. The barriers come down very quickly. And that's the journey we've taken. And we are enabling many suppliers with different kinds of solutions so that they can implement it at their place and find reporting to be less of a problem. And earlier I had mentioned that if we want more people on board, less spicy soup would be very useful. I essentially had suppliers in mind where if we could get them going with a lighter version, it would be most useful. But I found experts not to like the idea that a lighter version is required. I'm hoping that will change too over time.
Great. Well, thanks for that insight and the whole sort of holistic approach you take to working with suppliers to an end goal rather than just to a disclosure goal. I think that's really really very helpful, I think, for all of us to hear. So I'm going to come back to you, Colleen, actually. And you mentioned that over your reporting journey, you know, you have also, as we all have, noticed the interest of investors. And you talked about the way you're starting to think about moving your disclosure or including sort of investor focus in your disclosure and in your reporting. I wanted to ask, you know, what difference does that make for you in the organization? How does that change the way you report? How are you thinking about that? Does it change the sort of questions you ask internally in your own organization? Does it create new conversations? How is that working for you at SM?
Yes, Elaine, you know, interestingly, while we were in the works of writing or publishing our first sustainability report for 2014, there was an investor that required it, and it accelerated our process. So initially, our publication was it was even called ESG report because the primary stakeholder was the investor. And then with that, we have seen tremendous impact with our investors. First of all, those that are our existing investors that have ramped up their ESG interest. They have deepened our commitment with us. That's one. Another is we got into an engagement with investors who have always had higher priorities on ESG. And with this, I think, but what's important now for SM, because initially it was really investor focused, what's important now for SM is to have the same, that quality of the dialogues and assessments we have with our investors, they're now deeper. We are able to provide a 360-degree view, you know, on especially related to risks, what our plans are, a little forward conversations on what it could look like. And I think the accountability and transparency, pertinent data, it has been really disclosed. Targets has been established. But you know, now, while investors seem to be very important, of course, to us, right, and all, we want to have an equal level playing field for all our stakeholders. And in fact, we want deeper quality, the same quality we have as we engage our stakeholders, our investors, to our different stakeholders. And like Anirba was saying, because, you know, we deal with like how many thousands, if it's not 90,000+ in our supply chain. And if we really want, if you look at it from us, we have institutional investors that invest in SM. But But for SM, to the eyes of our value chain, we are one of their stakeholders that matter in their growth, in their investment plans and all whatnot, especially us when, because of the volume of our engagement with them. And we also, like Anirban, we started training our supply chain part, raising awareness on sustainability and all that. And I think just like we think of what matters to our institutional investors, which is purpose, impact, things that would make them have a more informed decision in their investments, making them see, assess the future of risk and opportunities in our engagement with us. I think a light version of the reporting for the supply chain that can be more focused on the purpose. What would matter really to us is not all these data that they have, but rather a more comprehensive and strategic information that will drive both our growth, because it's an ecosystem. As for us, SM, while we're a big retailer, we're the home of MSMEs. So many of our tenants, the brands we carry inside our retail store, we don't really have like our own, very few are our own brands, most are really MSMEs, and we have to carry them with us in this sustainability journey. But like what we said, the magic word here is it's a journey, it's not a race. So we have to respect that journey, and people have different starting lines. So I know I shifted a little on the supply chain, but yes, so for the investors, I think same principles that apply on how we deal with our investors, how the investors assess us, maybe decide, but on a more, it has to be in context. Let's put it that way, in context.
Very interesting. Vicky, you've also been experiencing this journey, and you did make the move to integrated reporting, as you mentioned. And I was wondering, how you actually reconcile the needs of the audience for your integrated reporting and the audience for sustainability reporting. Are you seeing, we heard a lot earlier on about different horses for different courses, different stakeholders, different needs, different information. How are you actually managing to reconcile all of that in the way you approach your integrated reporting?
Thank you for that, Elaine. For that integrated reporting, the driver actually was our chairman and CEO, Mr. Jaime Augusto Zubel de Ayala. I think investors are talking to him. He actually joined the conversation with our investors. And I think in one of those meetings, the issue or the topic of integrated reporting was brought up. And then he asked us whether we can look into that. I think integrated reporting started in 2013 and it gained traction in 2014, something like that. If my recall of that history is correct. And so in 2016, he said in one of the forums that probably we could already start our journey or the usage of IR in our annual report. And for that, I said, okay, if the boss says so, so let's do it. Let's see how are we going to use integrated reporting framework. So I asked Black Sun Singapore to train us, to help us look into that and how are we going to use the report. And the first output, it was really well liked because right now the investors are saying, now you are talking to us. You know what are our requirements and you communicate with us concisely. But I think that is the first layer of communication. There are still a lot of communication going on with the investors. And then they ask us for the ESG details. And so part of our report, we have there an appendix specifically for the ESG matters that investors and other stakeholders are are looking for. So we have in the last report, we have there the GRI index and also the SASB index. So that people or investors who needs information related to GRI, you can get it there. SASB, you have it there. But in the meat of the reporting, it's very concise. And I think the whole process help us also align our thinking and streamline the process. Material topics. So what are those? What are the so from how many material topics in the past, since we do our materiality assessment every 2 to 3 years, we are now down to 5 material topics. And these are all important to any stakeholders. But definitely, I would say that our report is specifically for the investors. But we can create sub-reports for a stakeholder. And we have that. So if that is being requested, I have that and I can give it to them. But the website, we also created a microsite and you can see all our ESG performances for the last how many years and what will be the target in the next few years. So it's really knowing who are your stakeholders, and for us the primary ones are the investors because it helped them allocate the capital. And that is important to us. And I think it's important for all of us here who are panelists in this session. We know that investors are important because they give us that needed capital for us to diversify or for us to um to invest some more, right? And for that, I have to give credit to my chairman and CEO, Mr. Jaime Augusto Sobel de Ayala, who told us, look into the integrated reporting framework.
Ladies and gentlemen, 5 minutes to landing.
Okay.
Oh gosh, we better fasten our seatbelts and speed up a little bit. So yes, they're very good timekeepers on this flight, aren't they? Anyway, well, thanks for that, Vicky. I think that's a really interesting insight of how you do think about and understand how to satisfy the needs of investors, as well as being able to have information available that all stakeholders could use. So I think we've had, really interesting set of insights from all of you about this alphabet soup and where you are with it and how spicy it is or isn't. And I think we've just got a few minutes to address, to hear a few final words from you. We did have questions from the audience that were sent in prior to the session. So just sort of picking up the main themes of those questions, I'd just like to ask you all to say just a couple of words on, this single reporting standard. Will it be beneficial? Should we use it? Should we push for it? Is it something that's going to add value, or should we just do what we're doing now? Every company looks at the landscape, selects what it thinks will most best serve its purpose and or its stakeholder needs, and just keep going. Should we go for the single reporting standard, or should we just keep moving forward with perhaps a slightly less spicy soup? A quick comment from you on all of that to help us round off this session. Should we go back and start with you, Esther, again?
Okay, if you are talking about a harmonized standard, the answer is yes. But if it is saying a single, only one standard, or one or the other, no.
Okay, harmonized, yes, single, no. Anirban.
Yes, Esther said it well. So again, the core question to address is, by doing all this, are you creating value? Different industries create value in different ways. Therefore, you can't possibly have one standard. You can have a few things in the standard which are common across industries, but even within an industry, you would possibly have a few mandatory points and some discretionary points. But keeping in mind that together, they indicate that you are creating value.
Okay, thank you. So not one single standard, but a framework which allows some sort of ability to adapt and differentiate according to the needs of your business.
If I may add one
Colleen?
more point, so,
Yeah.
if that also show that how you can differentiate your strategy, how deep your
Yes.
thinking is, because I mean, if you just like everyone use one single standard, you just tick boxing, then it may not show the depth of it. TCFD is gaining traction is because of the strategic thinking. Same for IRRC. So not just about operational reporting. So that is how you differentiate your strategy of sustainability, not just about reporting alone. Yeah.
Yes, I fully understand. I think it makes a lot of sense. Vicky, single
Yeah,
reporting
okay.
standard, harmonized. What do you think?
Okay. I think single reporting standard will be boring. We want to have a spicy soup, as what Arnie Bad said, right? And I think it's a harmonized version will be a lot better because we want to communicate the enterprise value creation of our businesses, of our business house. And I feel that I will be more creative with all of these resources available to me, it will force me how to think. It would force me how to strategize and really to create that value. So for me, I don't want to have a boring life. So I think a harmonized version is better.
Yes, well, I agree. Boring is never good. Never good. Colleen, what's your thoughts on all of this?
Yes, for me, three things: purpose, value, impact. And I think harmonizing this, complementing it, I think at the end of the day, whatever framework it is, these three is what people are looking for in what we're trying to do here.
Purpose, value, and impact. That's great. So it should be less spicy, but not boring. It should be harmonized, but not single, so that nobody can be differentiated. And I think those were absolutely fascinating insights, and not just insights, they're actually based on the many, many years of hard work and skill and experience of these fantastic panelists that we've had with us today. So Esther, Anirban, Vicky, Colleen, thank you so much for sharing those insights with us. It's been absolutely fascinating. I couldn't have picked a better panel throughout the day to engage with you on. So thank you so much.